Hey, I guess I just start. So firstly, thank you for coming because it's 5 o'clock in the afternoon and I'm sure lots of people have already done lots of talks today, so I'm glad you're still awake. So let me get this started. So yes, my name is Juliana Rufus and I'm a journalist who works for Al Jazeera English, a global news broadcaster. And I don't know, does everybody know Al Jazeera English? Yeah, everybody does. Okay, so in particular, I'm a reporter on a strand called People and Power. So I make 25-minute current affairs and investigation films. And one of the things that I'm worried about, I'm very passionate about the work that I do, and I feel that investigative journalism is needed to hold powers to account. But I'm worried that sometimes as investigative journalists, we speak to each other and we don't really break out from our own circles. So we read The Guardian in the UK, we watch Al Jazeera, and we're always in the same circles. And I was really hoping to find ways to present investigative journalism in new formats to reach new audiences. That's really behind the two projects that you're going to see today. So is it possible to create new formats of storytelling and to gamify specifically investigations to reach new and different audiences? And some of you may know this project, and in fact, well, it's a project called Pirate Fishing. It was an investigation that we did in Sierra Leone where we investigated illegal fishing. The problem that you have there is that South Korean ships, South Korean trawlers and Chinese trawlers are stealing the fish from local fishermen. They fish illegally in Sierra Leonean waters, and the country loses millions and millions of income, and also the livelihood of fishermen gets destroyed in the environment too. So in the original film, I set out with a colleague of mine to make a 25-minute film to look at the problem, and it was a very, very lucky investigation. Not everything goes that well. On the second day, we filmed 2 illegal trawlers, and then eventually managed to track their identity, and we managed to get the government to arrest and to fine them. So it was a very lucky outcome. And that was the film, and it was very well received, and so on. But then at an investigative journalism conference, I actually met somebody called Giulio Rubino, and we had this, he's in the front, right? We had this big brainstorm, and that was at the time when you had a lot of web documentaries, and I don't know how aware you are of that, but the Canadian Film Board and Arte, they've done some really great projects like Prison Valley and Gaza, Cederrod, and Bear 7-1. And the idea was to tell traditional documentary stories in new ways, and what people did a lot is organize the film content that they had in 3 particular ways. Either along a timeline, so that you could click the content and decide which period of the story you wanted to watch, or by character, so you could follow the story of a character, or by location, you could decide where to go. So in our brainstorm, we were sort of saying that we actually think that investigative journalism lends itself much more to interactivity than the web documentaries. Because if you're an investigative journalist, you're solving a puzzle. You're going down all these different avenues, you're trying different things, and you have to stack up a case, and you have to present an outcome in the end, which is exactly what we did in Pirate Fishing. And we had this conviction that we can create like a really good investigative interactive project, which is Pirate Fishing. So when you enter the Pirate Fishing website, you get this flashing icon, and you read your mail, and then you become the researcher on the team, and you get asked to join the investigators. And then basically what happens, we broke down the film into different clips that you watch as you go through, and here you see one of the illegal trawlers that we filmed, and you can see they've painted over the name there, and they've hung lots of fishing nets to hide the markings. And the real sort of, because what we wanted to do, which all the other web docs hadn't done, we still wanted to tell the story of our investigation from the beginning via the middle to the end. And that's when you run into a big problem with interactivity, because interactivity means to give your user freedom to choose. whilst at the same time, as a storyteller, you want and you need to control the narrative. So how do you resolve this contradiction of giving up your control of the narrative whilst at the same time guiding your person through, your user through? So what we did, we had four stages of scroll journalism with the clips embedded, and we realized that by giving users too much control over the narrative to let them roam around didn't really work for us. And instead we hit on gamification. So we introduced this leaderboard. And the key element of in this project is you watch the clips, and every time you collect information, you have a little photo come up on the right-hand corner in the clip, which you may have seen. And at the end of each clip, you have to take this information that you've received and you have to drag and drop it into your virtual notebook. And you have to differentiate whether it's criminal information, so criminal evidence, whether it's notes, or whether it's background. Now, the reason why this is important, if you're an investigative journalist, you need to collect proper evidence, because before I put a film on air, the lawyers will come to me and say, can we broadcast this? What is your evidence? Or are we going to get sued for libel? And I spent several hours, at least, talking through all my projects with lawyers who want to make sure that we're not going to get a legal case against us at Al Jazeera. So the understanding of differentiating criminal evidence from the rest is really crucial. And that is the element that we gamified in the pirate phishing project. And then the other thing that we did in the 4 stages, we also have virtual environments where you can go down different avenues and watch different clips, which is where we give you freedom over content, what to choose next. And then we did a classic, sort of some very, very basic gaming leaderboard stuff that you can get extra badges through extra content. And I think, as you've seen, we take you through different stages. But the thing is, what I felt, and the project did well, which was great, but what I felt at the end is that even though it was successful, the interactivity in some ways was superficial. And that real exciting interactivity is when you actually create a user journey that allows an individual outcome. Basically, when the users click, changes the events and the way somebody goes through the story. So that then became the goal of the next project, which is called Hacked. And again, this is based on a film that I made for Al Jazeera, a 25-minute investigation into Syria's cyberwar. And that's, everybody always thinks if you work in-house with a broadcaster, people let you do what you want. I have to be very strategic about what I do. I have to continue making my films and doing my main job, but I try and get the interactive projects in off the back of that. And my argument is, look, we've already done all the journalism, we've done all the filming, let's try and find different formats and different platforms to tell the story. So Hacked was about Syria's cyberwar, and what most people obviously know is that there is the ground war in Syria, but what we struggle with as journalists is the fatigue, the storytelling fatigue, that people have seen so much about Syria that we need to look for news stories. And I came across the story of Syria's cyberwar, which I knew very little about, and Syria came at the end, the Syrian uprising, at the end of the Arab Spring. So the story that we all knew was that of the internet as a tool of liberation and freedom, and the activists were using it to organize and bring down regimes. But the Assad government and also the Egyptians and so on, they realized very quickly that you could also use the internet to track networks and to hunt down activists. And that is what the Assad government did very well. So they used it for surveillance, and that really became the end of the Arab Spring, and it is ongoing. And that is the story that many people didn't really know. And it had a real impact on the activists. I mean, activists were rounded up and tortured for their passwords, because the government was really after networks, because once they had entry into a network, they could track down more people, they could use the social media to collect evidence. So I mean, the Syrian cyber war is a real war with casualties, where people died. And I guess the other element, and this is really how I came across the story, there was a cybersecurity company that managed to unearth, and they don't say how, but a massive hack on the internet where they found all the evidence, all the information that pro-Assad, pro-Syrian government hackers had hacked from anti-Syrian fighters, from militias. And the material in it was massive, and I'll refer to that in a minute. But they hacked battle plans, they hacked conversations about battle purchases, missile purchases. And for the first time, you could see how a military hack in a war situation can actually change the outcome of a battle, because it was a very strategic battle at Kibir Khazale, and you could see that the Syrian government had a strategic advantage by having that hacked information. So that's what the film was about. And learned on some lessons and some user feedback that we had from the pirate fishing project. Sort of when I asked for feedback afterwards, people were saying, we really want something to be used on a mobile phone. So we created this mobile phone web app, and it's a web app, which means it's not downloadable. All you do is you paste the URL into your mobile phone, and you're good to go. And that's what it looks like. Yeah, again, I'll talk you through it in a minute. Well, and the flaws of that in a minute as well. But that's what it looks like when you play it. And here's a sort of quick run through of what happens, like various features, and all of these I'll explain in more depth once I get the clip to play. Ooh, what have I done? Anybody make out some words? I mean, I'll run through this anyway. That's decryption. Video interviews. That's a CD infected with malware. The virus scan. Virtual virus scan on it. That's the phone call you get.
Hey, where are you? There is breaking news that the French broadcaster TV5 Monde.
Okay, so you can see it was powered by a platform called Conductor. One of the other ambitions that I had after pirate fishing. These projects take quite a lot of time and a lot of thinking, and a lot of them have been very expensive. So, for example, the Canadian Film Board and the ARTA projects, the web documentaries, a lot of them had an average budget of around $250,000. Now, this is not a reality in the world that I live in. So one of the things that I wanted to achieve with this phone app is work with an existing platform to make it cheap and to make it replicable, because I think these are the two things that we have to crack, because otherwise we keep reinventing the wheel, and that costs a lot of time and money. So I hooked up with Conductor to use the app. Yeah, that's okay. Sorry, I don't normally play the clip. So the idea is that you have all these different chat heads. You enter the app and you start communicating with a number of people. And these are the people that we met during the making of the film and that we filmed with. Only the idea is you enter the app and you become the person who investigates Syria's cyberwar. We did user testing right from the very beginning with 3 university groups. One is a group of social media students, the second was a group of games students, and the third one was a group of white hacking, ethical hacking students. And what we found is that they really resisted the idea of role play. They didn't want to be a journalist, they didn't want to be anybody, they just wanted to get into a project and be themselves, especially the ethical hackers. They were saying, why should we be a journalist? So we used very direct language when you get into the project. We want you to investigate Syria's cyberwar. And you start contacting the people, and that way, by talking to people in the different chat heads, you collect information. So that's the task that we set you. Collect the maximum amount of information in the minimum amount of time, which kind of replicates a journalist's task when you're on assignment, but we don't necessarily frame it as a journalism quest. Oh, sorry. So yeah, the task. So by communicating with people, you get sent all this information. So the first clip, for example, and this is where we've integrated all the material that we had from our research during the film story, but didn't necessarily use all of it in the film. So the first thing you hit on is a YouTube clip from Anonymous, the hacking group Anonymous, who were very active during the Syrian cyberwar. One of the things that they did is they hacked the Assad Ministry of Defense with a defacement hack, and that is what happened. So that's the sort of content. You can watch the clip. We send you the image of what the defacement hack looked like. You start communicating with activists, and you speak to an expert, and the expert tells you about the Syrian Electronic Army. Now, the Syrian Electronic Army in Syria's cyberwar was the direct adversary to Anonymous. They were a hacking group that worked on the side, and some people say was funded by the Syrian government, by President Assad's government. And they were the ones who were tracking down activists, and they carried out a lot of defacement hacks and worse hacks against people who they felt were against the Assad government. So they attacked a lot of media organizations, The Guardian, they attacked us at Al Jazeera, the New York Times, I think, and so on. And so this expert you communicate with by clicking these buttons for more. She gives you information about the Syrian Electronic Army, and she sends you, for example, a screenshot from the Syrian Electronic Army website where they asked their followers, this is a Facebook site, who should we ask next? And they got their followers to vote. And the Syrian Electronic Army, the feedback from the Syrian Electronic Army followers was, hack the Americans, which is what happened. So that's a type of information that you get. And then in this section, we tell you about how ISIS eventually took over the situation in Raqqa. We send you maps. So that's the information that you collect, the maximum amount of information in the minimum amount of time. You also conduct interviews. This is footage that we had from the documentary. So this is Rami Jara, who's one of the leading activists, and he's somebody who was tortured by the Syrian regime to reveal his password. And basically, these are the questions that you can ask Rami, and then the video plays. And that's how you choose who to interview and, well, within reason, what to ask them. This is a hacker, a Syrian hacker. The Syrian Electronic Army wanted to recruit him. He tells us his story. Again, you ask the questions. And this is actually the analyst from the cybersecurity company who tells us about the military hack. And again, you can watch that as video. So this is the content. But then, because obviously we wanted to make it interactive, what decisions can we give to the user that makes the project interactive? And within that, how then, based on those decisions, how can the users click change the outcome? And the first set of decisions is based on journalism craft. So you interact with these people, and you get the hacker, the one who was supposed to be recruited, or who said he was recruited by the Syrian regime. And he says to you, yes, I'm going to talk to you, but I want to hide my face. My family is still in Syria. I'm only going to speak if I don't show my face. So will you accept that or not? And as you've gathered from the film, we said yes. We verified that he was who he was. We went through various processes, and we said, yes, you can cover your face because truly your family is in danger. So if you keep insisting with somebody like that, and you can verify their identity, that they have to show their face, you're going to lose them as interviewees. And in kind of our version, that means you also lose data. You lose information. You don't get what he says. That's one of the journalistic decisions. On the other hand, if you are in contact with a guy on the internet who says he's a hacker, he's a black hacker, and he says, yeah, I'm going to talk to you, but pay me $2,000, I don't know if you'd pay him. We certainly didn't, because he's unverifiable, and you can't pay criminals. So in this case, the real answer, the answer is no. And then the third question is really based on security, because the thing is you have to you have to go through it as quickly as possible, and you have to collect all the information. But if you just rush through the experience and you choose always the quickest option, that is not always right. Sometimes you have to do things like in journalism, you have to do things slowly to get it right. So these are the sort of journalism decisions that lead to interactivity. And then the second set of decisions are based on hacking, on InfoSec. So, for example, you're in a hotel in Gaziantep, which is where we were, and I mean, I think you recognize that these decisions are based on what we went through during the making of the film. We got in touch with a group called Raqqa is Being Slaughtered Silently. This is quite a while ago. They're quite well known now. They're based in Raqqa, and they were charting the activities of ISIS and lived incredibly dangerously. Quite a few of their members have been executed. So you're then in the hotel, and will you connect to the hotel Wi-Fi, which has no time cost, you can do that quickly, or will you use a VPN to disguise? I guess you guessed that the correct answer is you use the VPN. And then the thing that we all never do, you get I mean, we called it Sky Chat because we couldn't use Skype for legal reasons, but really Sky Chat is Skype. That's how you speak to a lot of people. Are you going to update or not? And I mean, I'm certainly guilty, far less so now, of just going later, because it takes time. But of course, it's absolutely instrumental that your virus shield is up to date, and you get hacked if you don't. And this really, it comes later on. This is the outcome. If you don't use a VPN, you get a blackmail hack. And this is what happened. Somebody's actually accessed, that is the price for not using a VPN in a hotel. Somebody hacks you, and you have a time loss, and you have to restore. You have to, well, paying the ransom is not really an option. And the thing is, so all of this obviously looks and is incredibly gamified, and I will come back to this point as well. But all this information is based on things that really happen, and I will talk about that much more later on, because there's a huge issue, obviously, around that. So, for example, with this blackmail hack, this is taken from an FBI document where a member of the Syrian Electronic Army had hacked somebody and sent them this email. So, literally down to every bracket in the text that you get in terms of the blackmail hack, this is a hack that happened. And then on top of that, because I was really fascinated by the whole idea of social engineering. This is something that I learned during the making of the film that I didn't know before. So hacking is one thing, and obviously people spend a lot of time coding malware and so on, but hack isn't good if you don't find a way of getting somebody to click on the link. So the whole idea of social engineering is really the psychology of what do you do to get somebody to click on a link. So one of the things that the Syrian Electronic Army did, for example, they created this fake spreadsheet in Syria that was supposedly contained all the names of the activists that were wanted by the Assad regime. So this spreadsheet was sent around and with a message saying, check if your name is on it. Are you wanted by the Syrian government? And of course, all the activists went like, oh my God, and clicked it, and their families did too. And that was the social engineering that was used to get people to click on the malware. So what we do throughout the app, we slip you play hacks, malicious links, and if you click on it within this, you get hacked as well. And again, every single hack that we send you, like for example the spreadsheet and so on, is based on a real hack that happened during the Syrian cyberwar. So this is not stuff that we created. This was all the information we had researched during the making of the film, and that we then used for this project. So the challenge in that, the additional challenge, is really to avoid being hacked. You have to protect not only yourself, obviously, but also your sources, because, I mean, you might download malware, but the people that you work with in the field, much worse things could happen. And maybe I should say, I mean, the processes that we had, before you all read that, the processes that we had to go through during the making of the film. I mean, when I first proposed the film to Al Jazeera, you know, the cybersecurity department did not like it because the Syrian Electronic Army had hacked Al Jazeera. So we had to get sandbox computers, we had to use encryption, and I mean, we basically had to live through all this security, cybersecurity issues that we then used to create the film. So really the idea to use this gamification came out of a talk that I had seen, and it was a talk by a gamer. In fact, it was the person, I don't know if some of you know the project, it's called Papers, Please. And it's a serious game based on immigration where you're an immigration official, but it's like a proper game. And you're an immigration official in a situation with a humanitarian catastrophe, and you have to decide who you let across the border. Is it a genuine refugee who needs shelter, or is it a terrorist? And the guy who created that game said in this talk, and this is what stuck with me, anything that has rules can be gamified. And I think this is like the big takeaway lesson, maybe the one line to take away from this talk. So when you gamify something then, if you gamify journalism or anything else, the question is, what are the rules? And based on this, knowing the rules, what is then right and wrong, and what defines success and failure. And basically that is what we did with the journalism decisions and with the information security, with the hacking decisions. We figured out what the right thing to do is and what the wrong thing to do is, and the user's decisions are based on that. And within the project and your user journey through it, that defines your success and failure. But it was initially all about figuring out the rules of a situation. And I think that's the one thing that is really applicable to other projects too. So this project was definitely not easy and led to many, many sleepless nights. Because one of the big challenges then is, you know, you don't just work on the content. Oh, okay. Talking about being hacked, yeah. Hello, here's my calendar. Hello, everybody. Okay. Oh, gosh. This is really embarrassing. Okay. Great. Yeah, I know. Okay. That's my desktop. You can have that. That's an op. Oh, God. What's it done? Okay, I might have to jump. I shut itself down. Oh, here we go. Okay, sorry, I just... Right, okay. Just when I'm talking about challenges. There's one. Okay, so the challenges for us were that we didn't have to think about the content, as obviously is like my main preoccupation when I do print or TV, but we really had to start thinking about the rules, which was something that was very new to me. We had to develop a quest and metrics. Basically, what do you have to do, and how do we measure whether you do well or not? So that the quest is collect the maximum amount of information in the minimum amount of time. And then the most important thing, and this was really what gave us a big, big headache, we had to maintain the journalistic credibility. And this is where the absolute criteria for inclusion was, did it happen, is it real? And that was also, I think, it was a team challenge, because the team that I worked with, they came obviously from computing, and they had the platform, and they had all these really creative ideas, and we can hack you this way and that way, and they actually got quite frustrated with me because I turned down a lot of the ideas because I said it didn't happen. Because, I mean, in the end of the day, I work for Al Jazeera, I work for a news channel. This project is going to live on our website. There is no way that we can be seen to mislead people about whether it is the truth or not. It has to be truthful. We have to protect our reputation as the broadcaster, and you know, and so on. So that was really, that was the key criteria for inclusion. And the more successful we were with introducing the gamification, the more sometimes it felt like a game, and that sometimes got quite scary. So we had to think of ways how to bring it back. So we included a lot, like the people that you get to interview, where they agreed. We included their Facebook profiles. You can actually, within the app, you can interact with them and message them. And also, I should say that there was a different way for me of seeking consent, because we developed a new format. So normally, when I make a film, I have to ask somebody for informed consent. But because this was a format that kind of, we didn't even know it was going to pan out that way when we started the process. What I did with everybody who's in this app, every contributor, I actually sent them the app before it went live, and I said, is it okay that we represent you like this? And not just that, I also sent it to a lot of Syrian contacts that I had and said, do you think this is okay? Does this feel okay? Because we're making an app, like a gamified app about the Syrian war, and the war is killing people. Is this too much of a game? Do you think we're making light of your misery? Is it okay to do this project? And the feedback that I had, that it was, and they actually thought it was really useful, because it was also teaching people how to stay safe. But for me, these were super big worries, you know, to create something where people say, oh, you just made a game. You know, it feels like a game, how can it be news? Or you're making a game out of the Syrian war. That's really not cool. Then all those things were difficult decisions. So this then is a drop-down menu, sort of somewhat replicating the notebook that we have, and it's got quite a lot of different functions. I mean, firstly, the obvious one, it's got status bar, where you can see the data collected and the time taken, and that obviously changes as you run through the project. And there is a submit button, so anytime you feel like you're ready to submit it, you can do that, and then you get a personal score on how you did. Yeah, you can add your profile if you want to put your photo, and then it's just kind of quite a nice gimmicky thing. If you add your photo, it becomes a direct communication between you and the sources. It's just a bit more personalized as an experience. There's a live news feed. We've carefully, like for age reasons, selected Twitter feeds and Facebook feeds of what's going on in Syria at the moment, but trying obviously to avoid any gruesome stuff. This is the virus scan. When you click that, you can check whether you've been hacked or not. It tells you information about if you fell for a hack, if we tricked you into it. It tells you what the hack was. And then you also have information about the interviewees. And this was really the sort of one, for me, maybe the single biggest ethical problem, because I'm saying everything in the app is real. That is true maybe with some exceptions about the characters, because we have a local producer in the app, a guy called Bassam, who's basically modeled on the local producer that we worked with when we made the film. And obviously we didn't film with our local producer, but he was absolutely instrumental in making the film. There's also this expert in there called Jane, which is the sort of person that I would always call, and any journalist would call, for expertise, but obviously we didn't film with that person either. So we sort of had big struggles on whether we could have these sort of characters in it. If we, you know, can I say everything in this is real, and then have two characters that we're sort of replicating but haven't filmed with? So I sort of spoke to journalism professors and then stuck to the rules of docudrama that is used in television, and basically used that as a criteria. But we also have the interviewee section, where you can always go and check out who's who and what's what. We opted in this notebook for complete transparency, so that if anybody ever comes and says, you know, but this guy Bassam, I've Googled him and he doesn't exist. Yeah, actually we told you that he is modeled on the person that we worked with. So that's the drop-down section. So for me, that was the thing that was possibly the biggest success about this project, is that whereas in a traditional film or print piece, we would tell you about social engineering and we would explain to you how you get hacked. You know, we'd say, oh, they did this, and then they coded that malware, and then they send around this email, and then, you know, activists got hacked. What we do in the project, we actually expose you to the play hacks. So what you have with this kind of interactivity that the format as well as the content tells the story. And that's the thing that I'm pretty excited about, that you take somebody through it. So in the app, you as a user, you experience the hack. So that's the thing that I actually think worked really well. I think what it can do, it can create an immersive, personalized experience of a news story, because you truly interact with it. So it's your journey, and we definitely found in user testing that it is immersive. User testing, we had a beta version of this that was selected in the gallery for Sheffield International Film Festival. And we had it in the gallery on these giant touch screens. And it was just the best user testing instrument ever, because all we had to do is stand in a corner of the room and just watch what people were doing, and where they get stuck and what was not clear. And it was absolutely, I mean, everything people say is like, you know, that age group was native. The gallery was open to anybody who lives in Sheffield, so not just festival goers. And we had students who were stuck in front of the app like for hours, and like often as sort of groups, and they were just running through it and touching stuff, and it really, really worked. And then we found like the older people got on the whole, the less, you know, the less intuitive they found us, the more they didn't know how to interact with it, but they were also really worried about being wrong. So like we found, like as people got older, they didn't want to be seen to make mistakes, and especially I would say men were a little worse than that than women. Sort of public mistakes of clicking on something that wasn't actually interactive was really worrisome. And then there came this woman, and she was really the silver lining. She was at least in her 70s. And she came and she said, so what do I do then? You know? So we took her through, and she was on it for about an hour. And she had been a nun in Africa, and she just absolutely loved it. We couldn't get her off it. So she was the person who proved everybody wrong. But I mean, I cannot overemphasize the importance of user testing in something like that, because you're actually creating something with a user journey that is unknown to people. So you have to just watch people, not even ask them about something, because your questions already guide them. Just watch them and see where they get stuck. And it's really scary how much they get stuck and how much you have to redesign it. And I now understand my computing friends who talk about an agile working process. I kind of really get what it is. You have to do like a constant redesign. Talking about the things that went well, and this is kind of age group 16, 17, that's probably the kind of most prominent kind of feedback that we got. It was addictive. People used that word quite a lot. And then, yeah, it's not really a game. It's much more scary and real. And that was really important to me, because my fear was always that people will think of it only as a game. But I think it was quite clear to that age group that it wasn't just a game. So successes. Both successes for pirate fishing and for Hacked is that both of them, I mean, the goal was to reach new audience and also younger audiences. Pirate fishing, we measured 83% of visitors on the pirate fishing website had never before been on an Al Jazeera website. So 83% new users. Hacked even higher, and I think that was because we were a bit more strategic about promoting it, and we got it onto a lot of gaming websites. So there was definitely traffic from the gaming websites to Hacked. So 86% visitors to the Al Jazeera website. What I did, what none of us planned for, and which is great, both projects have been used in schools. Pirate fishing has been used in schools in America. The American Journalism Educators Association, I think they're called. They've kind of featured it in one of their magazines, and it's used by American Journalism Educators. And then the thing that's been quite cool about Hacked, it was actually picked up by computing teachers. And it's used not to teach journalism, but in England, I was in schools in South London where they used it to teach online security to kids. And, you know, the kids thought that was a lot more exciting than relying on traditional teaching experiences. So, I mean, that wasn't planned, but that was the outcome. And then, obviously, I argued with management that all this is wonderful for the Al Jazeera brand, because I'm getting us exposed to new audiences. And I think the other success is that I believe we truly created a project where the click did change the experience of the story. So in that sense, set out to achieve what we wanted to. The things that didn't go so well. I mean, firstly, what I said, the things that I'm saying about establishing a user journey. Looking back, I really wish we would have gotten a user experience person on board, somebody who just designs apps, because this is a new format. It's not like print or TV where people are native and they understand, even if they haven't been taught in journalism school, they still understand the rules and what they have to do. Obviously, they either read or they watch. But in our projects, you have to go through and we have to tell you how to navigate through it, how success and failure is designed and so on. And that takes quite a lot of knowledge of how to create a user journey. And I kind of think we did okay, but we do see dropout at the beginning, and I think this is because the user journey could be like really massively improved. And on another project, I would get a UX person on board for sure. The whole idea of everybody wants to do their stuff on mobile phones, we actually found that a lot of people wanted to use it on a desktop. So the whole kind of, yes, listen to user feedback, but we should have definitely scaled to done a version that scales on computers as well as mobile phones. Completely underestimated the fear of the topic, of people getting hacked. And I think one of the things, and it really did not occur to me, the URL that we have, SciHack, www.scihack.com, SY standing for Syria. Like most people who know stuff about hacking say, this looks like it's malware. So I think like there were probably quite a large percentage of people who didn't click on our link because they were suspicious of it. So we should have chosen something really innocuous wherever. But it just hadn't occurred to me, like, as a journalist, that I should have watched out for that. We brainstormed quite a lot for that URL. Also, our cybersecurity people at Al Jazeera were very worried that the app would get us hacked, that it would be like holding up a red flag to the Syrian Electronic Armies. So we really had to jump through a lot of hoops to get this launched. That was a big delay. And yeah, I think the engagement time could have been better. The people who got into it got really into it and really spent a lot of time. But I think, like I said, the user journey, we could have designed better, and then it would have been a smoother ride in and through. And then maybe the last thing that isn't on there, I think what many people are realizing, if you create something like that, you need a massive marketing budget to push it out there. Because you create this sort of thing, also web documentaries, and how do people know that it exists? So if you do something like that, really make sure you have a massive budget for promotion. And we put in so much time and evenings and whatever to just promote it. And yes, but it must have done something good, because last night we had news that it's just been nominated for the Webby Awards. And it's actually been in the integrated mobile experience, so it's up against the Apple App Store and the Reuters app and Rogue One and something that is a sort of a very small project, sort of done by 3 people on a very small budget, purposefully on a small budget. That's great. So if you do like it, vote for us. I have to say that. But now I'm actually too embarrassed to keep that website up, so I'll give you that whilst, if there are any questions. Is there anybody who's managing it, or shall I, how does it work? Also, because I restarted the presentation, I don't actually quite know how I'm doing for time. 15 minutes? Yeah, okay, good.
It's amazing. I wonder if my team will be ever able to do stuff like this. But I ask you, how many developers did you need? How much time? And do you collect real data of users?
Yeah, I found with both of these projects, time is really difficult. Like, for example, the launch of Hack was massively delayed because Al Jazeera security really wanted to go through it and make sure you know, it's as safe as possible so that the broadcaster doesn't get hacked. And pirate phishing at the time, we asked for some extra money because we suddenly had all these realizations how we could do it better. So what I found with these projects is that actually I've worked on them on and off, and the teams as well. So I can tell you the time, but it's absolutely not representative. I would say, like with Hacked, I would say pure production time. I mean, given that we had already made the film and whatever, we probably had about 8 weeks. 6 to 8 weeks. It's really hard to say because we kind of all spin so many plates sort of these days. But between 6 and 8 weeks. And so it was myself, the main people in it, and then Natalie Rios-Robert from Conductor, who was my counterpart, so from the platform. And then they had some developers, but because the platform had been developed, and that was the whole idea, do something, you know, that is already out there. So that obviously made it quicker. And then I had two young ladies, very young and very dedicated at Al Jazeera, who did the graphic design. But like I said, retrospectively, a UX person would be like #1 on my list.
I've got another question, a similar question probably. You talked about people and engagement, and do you have numbers how many people were reached by this game? Because I'm working with a public broadcaster in Germany, and we often have the problem that we have a nice user journey, nice game, and then people don't simply use it. They want to read a text or watch a video, something like that. Have you any numbers in relation to other kinds of content?
Okay, I know this sounds so crap, but it really is. I can't believe, but we had the first 3 weeks, and I cannot, this is really true, I cannot remember the figure that we had for the first 3 weeks. What I do know, it's like what you could really see, like for example, when Gamer Sutra, as like a really big gaming publication took it up, you get a massive spike. I mean, it's really, it's as simple as that, and that's what we looked at in the first 3 weeks primarily. And this is where the conclusion with the marketing budget is like, really, there is no point doing that if people don't put a marketing budget behind it. But I've sort of really learned that the hard way also after two projects. I think getting it into schools is a big deal, and we got a lot of publicity for both projects, especially for Hacked. I mean, we got massive press reviews, and like I had a folder that big in the end, and that's really sort of what I'm saying to Al Jazeera, because like I said, the engagement time could have been better. Which I connect with the user journey, but my argument in some ways is because this project was very cheap, to get this sort of coverage in the press, like our marketing people tell me, you could not have spent the money that we had as a budget for marketing and gotten the same amount of press. So that's one of my arguments. I'm just saying it's good for the brand. Plus, we've really reached with that a younger audience, but promotion is absolutely key, and you know, and how many people go towards it is absolutely, uptake is related to promotion and the effort that's been made.
Thank you.
Well, I can maybe also say another thing that sort of in user journey, the sort of unexpected things that come at you in terms of guiding people through. I think the biggest thing that was really difficult is, I mean, obviously we had to tell people how you go through and what defines success and failure and so on. And I'm sort of in it as the lead journalist, giving you information or not. And at some stage, I was also telling people how to navigate through it and what to do next. And that became a real mess. And that was really the bit when it felt most like a game, because you couldn't differentiate anymore what was kind of rules, what was journalistic content. And this is where it was incredibly lucky that we had gotten the people from the games design course, the gamers, in as a user group. And basically there was this super smart guy on it. And I felt so stuck. I knew it was a mess, but I couldn't quite figure out why it didn't feel like real and what was not working. And he basically said, you need two things. You need an in-game experience and out-of-game experience. And I said, what? Because I'm a journalist and I don't really deal with these things. But basically the in-game experience, this is how we separated it in the end. And that's the bit that resolved it. And I never thought, I thought it was journalism ethics that would resolve the problem of does it feel real or not. But it was actually a design question that resolved this contradiction. So what we needed to do, we needed to stick to the fact that everything that is in the messaging exchanges is journalism. And we could categorically say what you get in the messages is journalism. And then we created drop-down notifications, and that is where we tell you what you have to do next and where you have to do the rules. And that's the out-of-game experience. And even though probably nobody would ever think of those words and the users wouldn't practically be able to say, oh, you're using this for that, it was so intuitive that the moment we did it, it was tidy. And the problem went away. And that, to me, was a really big thing, because I thought it was a problem of ethics, but it was a design issue that solved it. Good. I can see the next round of people queuing. And you're probably all dying for a drink. So thank you very much for making problem. And it was a very, very lucky investigation. Not everything goes that well. On the second day, we filmed 2 illegal trawlers and then eventually managed to track their identity, and we managed to get the government to arrest and to fine them. So it was a very lucky outcome. And that was the film, and it was very well received, and so on. But then at an investigative journalism conference, I actually met somebody called Giulio Rubino, and we had this, he's in the front, right? We had this big brainstorm, and that was at the time when you had a lot of web documentaries, and I don't know how aware you are of that, but the Canadian Film Board and Arte, they've done some really great projects like Prison Valley and Gaza, Sederot, and Bear 7-1. And the idea was to tell traditional documentary stories in new ways, and what people did a lot is organize the film content that they had in 3 particular ways. Either along a timeline, so that you could click the content and decide which period of the story you want, hung lots of fishing nets to hide the markings, and the real sort of, because what we wanted to do, which all the other web docs hadn't done, we still wanted to tell the story of our investigation from the beginning via the middle to the end. And that's when you run into a big problem with interactivity, because interactivity means to give your user freedom to choose, whilst at the same time, as a storyteller, you want and you need to control the narrative. So how do you resolve this contradiction of giving up your control of the narrative whilst at the same time guiding your person through, your user through? So what we did, we had four stages of scroll journalism with the clips embedded, and we realized that by giving users too much control over the narrative to let them roam around didn't really work for us. And instead we hit on gamification. So we introduced this leaderboard. And the key element of in this project is you watch the clips, and every time you collect information, you have a little photo. I was really hoping to find ways to present investigative journalism in new formats to reach new audiences. That's really behind the two projects that you're going to see today. So is it possible to create new formats of storytelling and to gamify specifically investigations to reach new and different audiences? And some of you may know this project, and in fact, well, it's a project called Pirate Fishing. It was an investigation that we did in Sierra Leone where we investigated illegal fishing. The problem that you have there is that South Korean ships, South Korean trawlers and Chinese trawlers are stealing the fish from local fishermen. They fish illegally in Sierra Leonean waters, and the country loses millions and millions of income, and also the livelihood of fishermen gets destroyed in the environment too. So in the original film, I set out with a colleague of mine to make a 25-minute film to look at the... I guess I just start. So firstly, thank you for coming, because it's 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'm sure lots of people have already done lots of talks today, so I'm glad you're still awake. So let me get this started. So yes, my name is Juliana Rufus, and I'm a journalist who works for Al Jazeera English, a global news broadcaster. And I don't know, does everybody know Al Jazeera English? Yeah, everybody does. Okay, so in particular, I'm a reporter on a strand called People in Power. So I make 25-minute current affairs and investigation films. And one of the things that I'm worried about, I'm very passionate about the work that I do, and I feel that investigative journalism is needed to hold powers to account. But I'm worried that sometimes as investigative journalists, we speak to each other and we don't really break out from our own circles. So we read The Guardian in the UK, we watch Al Jazeera, and we're always in the same circles. And I wanted to watch, or by character, so you could follow the story of a character, or by location, you could decide where to go. So in our brainstorm, we were sort of saying that we actually think that investigative journalism lends itself much more to interactivity than the web documentaries. Because if you're an investigative journalist, you're solving a puzzle. You're going down all these different avenues, you're trying different things, and you have to stack up a case, and you have to present an outcome in the end, which is exactly what we did in Pirate Fishing. And we had this conviction that we can create like a really good investigative interactive project, which is Pirate Fishing. So when you enter the Pirate Fishing website, you get this flashing icon, and you read your mail, and then you become the researcher on the team, and you get asked to join the investigators. And then basically what happens, we broke down the film into different clips that you watch as you go through, and here you see one of the illegal trawlers that we filmed, and you can see they've painted over the name there, and they've